With the news of critical race theory being banned in schools and Juneteenth now being recognized as a federal holiday, what message is being sent to the public about race and white supremacy?
White people and conservative forces in this country for a very long time, really since the 90s, they've been forming their own coalitions to reform public education and the type of message that they want to instill on the minds of children. Not just do black and brown children suffer, but also white children suffer, because here we have the reinforcement of white supremacy in the school system. If there's going to be any kind of resolve in this country when it comes down to racism, white supremacy, white people themselves have to confront their own racism and white supremacy.
Here with us to discuss this topic and give us an update on critical race theory is Tony Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, dear sister.
Yes, sir. Governor Ron Desantis recently added fuel to the discussion about the banned critical race theory curriculum. He equated the teaching of CRT with the teaching of students to attack police officers. Is DeSantis's political rhetoric a dog whistle tactic to support the whitewashing of the school curriculum?
Absolutely. And there, where you're dealing with, see, I'm actually thankful for that type of exaggerated discourse by Ron DeSantis, because we have to reflect ourselves when we're exaggerating historical facts to prove what we argue in terms of Black history and our own condition in America and what we experience in the course of world history. We can't deal with exaggeration. Ron DeSantis is absolutely dealing with exaggeration, and exaggeration is a lie. And there are no teachers in classrooms right now teaching that students should, or when they get older, they should attack police officers when they get pulled over. No, this has nothing to do with theory. This is fact. Critical race theory has to do with a movement that began in the 1970s by Black legal scholars that analyzed how the law system, the criminal justice system, how they've really played against Black and brown people in this country, how we've experienced racism as a result of the way that things are set up. There is no theory, in truth, when it comes down to that. We're experiencing it in fact. And these children in public schools, they're experiencing it. In private schools, they're experiencing it. In general in America, from the time that the child is very little, they could notice that something is wrong. I'm talking about Black and brown children. And so to just try to take away the whole discourse that racism exists in pretty much every aspect of life, including in the system of policing and a system of law, that's like really lying to the children. Really, we need to really reinforce true education to children. If public schools are not doing it, we have to invest and make sure that our children are being taught accurately. It's very unfortunate, and I know we're going to be talking about this a little bit more, but critical race theory has now been discussed in a more broader sense to include really all history. So now we're gonna ignore the fact that racism has existed in this country. How did white people get to America to begin with, and how were Black people brought here, and how was the Native American? How did he experience injustice from the time that white people came here? What, they got rid of themselves? That makes absolutely no sense. And so this is what we're dealing with just trying to ignore and trying to get rid of even the whole discussion about race and racism in this country.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think we are headed toward the criminalization of education?
Remains to be seen. I myself, as a public school educator and generally as an educator myself, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything in the classroom. And I'm going to continue to teach the way that I am. And I know other educators are going to be doing the same thing, conscientious educators that care about the minds and the development of these children. We can't lie to them. We have to prepare them for what they're going to be dealing with in the world. And we also have to prepare them for establishing something new for ourselves in our communities, and create something of substance where we could feed off of the land, develop our own hospitals, develop our own businesses for the benefit of our people. That's the true civics education that we should be moving towards.
Right. What types of educational and, I guess, historical information is being excluded from school curriculums as we speak?
Rosalind, this is part of a nationwide movement where you find, as I said before, conservative forces have banded up together, and now they're trying to get rid of the discussion of the transatlantic slave trade in textbooks. Florida and Texas are big when it comes down to the development of textbooks, and we found that in many textbooks in Florida and Texas, they've gotten rid of even the discussion of the transatlantic slave trade in the classroom. They've changed up the terminology to something like the triangular trade, and then all of a sudden Black people just showed up and they came here to help white people. That is completely inaccurate history, and that ignores the fact of the kind of abuse and torture and disrespect culturally as well as physically that we have experienced here in this country, how Latinos also have come to this country and have experienced the racism that they have experienced, ignoring the fact that America colonized the area that we know today as California, New Mexico, and Texas, and it just ignores the fact of the hand that they played in the injustice in acquiring all that territory. These are just some of the things that are removed from the curriculum. Anything dealing with the experience of racism in the criminal justice system, those kind of things we could expect to be removed. In truth, the curriculum itself already, when we're dealing with the civics curriculum, it's already scripted in the state of Florida. And so any kind of discussion already when it comes down to racism and the cultural realities that our children experience, that is really removed already. What is going to be put more into place is what they term as being patriotism and the love for this country more into the curriculum from the time of that children are in elementary school all the way up to high school. What we have to realize is that the greatest patriots in this country have been always the ones that have stood up for those who have experienced injustice from the time, from the very beginning of this country up to the present. We could say that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself, in the work that he worked for, he was more of a patriot than George Washington himself, just ignoring that there was a problem with slavery, which the founding fathers did, and it irresponsibly led to a civil war. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he stood up and fought for what he believed was right. And these are some of the things that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us, and the kind of principles that we should be instilling in our children and in our people. Take on the mantle of responsibility so that we could do right among ourselves and do right by each other and establish something for ourselves, including an education for ourselves so that we could do right by ourselves.
Now, Desantis said the teaching of critical race theory was responsible for poor literacy rates in schools. Would you say there is truly a connection between critical race theory and literacy rates?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you what, one of the main problems right now that we are experiencing, I would like to quote Dr. Asa Hilliard, very beautiful brother. He said, if you want the elephants to grow, you feed the elephants. You don't weigh them. What does that mean? If you want the children to learn, then you teach them. You don't keep testing them and over-testing them. The problem that we're experiencing right now is that the jobs of teachers are in a balance based on the performance of students. So from the time that they're in elementary school, all they're taught really to do is to pass an exam. And if they don't do well on the exam, then the teacher themselves are viewed as being the problem. And then teachers are targeted. Good teachers are targeted. And they find themselves not being career teachers as we found at one time. Teaching was a career profession at one time. We don't find career teachers hardly anymore. And so by the time that children come into the middle school, and I know this because I experienced it firsthand myself, a lot of these children don't know how to write essays. What I found is I had one child enter into a contest very recently. What she did was, the way she wrote her essay was, I gave her a couple of sources to draw from. So according to source A, of course, according to source B, according to source C. I'm like, sweetheart, what are you doing? Like, name the source, name the author. Well, no teachers ever taught me to do that. Why? Because that's the way that they're taught how to pass the exam. Source A, source B, source C. They're scared to extract any kind of information and put it in their own words, because the tests are designed that way. They can't go outside of any kind of source and make any kind of critical arguments themselves. They have to always copy and paste and quote and not really analyze anything critically themselves. This is what education or miseducation is producing in our children today. And that's the real root of the problem, not anyone teaching children the knowledge of themselves. In fact, the knowledge of themselves is what empowers our children to be themselves and to become active producers in life.
Now, does the exclusion of curriculum where Black and brown children can see themselves affect their interest in learning and their overall sense of well-being?
Absolutely. I'm gonna use this analogy. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has taught us that when you take a picture of a group of people in a room and then you show them that picture, the main one that they're looking for in the picture is themselves. And so when we're dealing with any kind of curriculum, we have to style it in a way and form that all of the children in a room, in a classroom, could see themselves. That's how I teach. And I pattern my way of teaching from some of the best teachers that I've encountered, including the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. There's others like Shika Akua, Dr. Asa Hilliard, as I mentioned him earlier, Dr. Anthony Browder. They always focus on what needs to be taught according to the cultural reality of children. When you're dealing with ancient history, when you're dealing with Imhotep, who was a multi-genius. Our children are multi-geniuses. He was an architect. He worked in the government, a high position of government there in Kemet or Egypt. He was a medical genius. And so you take a look at a lot of these children, their minds are operating at such a high level and such a fast pace that oftentimes teachers don't know how to deal with them. No, you have to model the curriculum in a way that piques their interest. Sometimes I have multiple activities going on in the classroom, but it's all oriented towards for the children to be able to see themselves and what they can produce. They need to see the examples that, especially young people, there were great generals at the age of 14, 15 in world history. They were conquering places on the earth. They were great teachers. They were very young. They need to see themselves in that same way, in that same light. And so we as educators, that's the kind of light that we need to produce in our children.
Now, speaking of what our children are being taught in their schools, many of our people became adults before learning about Juneteenth, and
Absolutely.
Others are just finding out about it as a result of becoming a federally recognized holiday, which
Right.
suggests that there is still and has always been a large gap in learning here in America.
Right.
Very, very quickly, now that it's nationally recognized, do you feel that other information about the history of our people will become more available or accessible to us?
I would say no. As we see these attacks from Ron DeSantis, that's a good name for him, Ron DeSantis. We could see the attack on particularly Black education already, as the way things are when you're dealing with homeschooling. Children are now receiving hardly anything when it deals with the study of Black history or Latino history or Native American history. Those things are not being prioritized, and we can see that the attack on education on that level is going to increase. When it comes down to the teaching of Juneteenth and subjects like that, We have to do everything that we can as independent educators. I would strongly suggest that parents invest in independent educators such as Shahid and Sister Shahida Muhammad in Chicago. Myself, I'm contracted by many teachers and also by parents to come in and teach children our history in the proper way that it should be taught, and the proper way it should be learned. And so I would strongly suggest that parents find out what resources are available to them so that our children could be taught properly. Oh, I can't hear you, the assistant.
Can you hear me now? There we go.
I can hear you.
Thank you so much for your insight on this topic. And I look forward to speaking more with you about this next week.
Yes, ma'am. Looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. When we return, How to Eat to Live, weekly contributor Charles Muhammad will be back to talk about the benefits of milk and wheat. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Milk and wheat has been suggested as a staple part of our daily diet for generations. However, in recent years, due to diet fads and pseudoscience, the consumption of whole milk and wheat has been on the steady decline.
Why do humans drink so much milk? And given that all mammals lactate, why do we favor certain types of milk over others? Milk is the first thing we drink, and thanks to developments in the production and variety of dairy products, it can take on countless forms for our dietary and sensory well-being. Milk's primary function is as a complete source of nutrition for newborns. In fact, since it has all of the vital nutrients for development and growth, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins and minerals, and water, milk is the only thing a baby even needs to ingest for the first 6 months of life. The unique makeup of milk can vary depending on factors like species, diet, and location.
Joining us to discuss this in depth is Charles Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us. What other foods besides the navy bean are necessary to have in our diets?
Well, obviously, the intro also alluded to the same fact that wheat and bread are also essential for good health. Now, in How to Eat to Live, Book 2, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said on page 179, he says, Almighty God, the best knower and wisest of them all, did not teach me to eat a great variety of foods. Just simple common foods is what he dwelt upon. And finally, he said to me, bread and milk was enough and that it was the best of foods. So here we are taught that the best of foods are bread and milk. And inside our culture or our cultural experience in America, religious culture, the Lord's Prayer, you're asking for our daily bread. And in the Bible, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. So these are prophetic foods that have a correlation to goodness and righteousness and good for the body. And throughout the Bible, at least 21 times, the promised land is called the land of milk and honey. And then Jesus is called the good shepherd. Now, shepherds, they not only lead their flock to pastures of greenery, like the goats and the sheep and the cows, but the shepherd or the herder can also call upon its flock to reciprocate, to get milk from the cow, milk from the goat, and to share the sheep for its wool. So it is a reciprocity relationship. So milk has always been in high regard along as wheat in the diet.
This is a touchy subject for some. What would you say to those who suffer from lactose intolerance?
Well, I kind of missed something in the beginning. You know, the pasteurization and homogenization process of milk destroys what those nutrients and those minerals and other components of milk are destroyed through the homogenization pasteurization process in milk. So it caused a adverse effect to many of us. And then along with bread is supposed to go through a certain process. So the bread industry wants to get it to the shelf fast and keep it on the shelf. So the shelf life turns into shelf death. But when it comes to milk, okay, milk is better for you when it is fermented. All right. If you can't take the liquid form, the pure milk, when it ferments, it is better for you and for your heart and your overall health. Now, that book, Eat Wheat, I have that book. I took many notes. You know, a lot of the things I say is not just what we feel or what the Elijah Muhammad said. We supplement this information with what the scientists are saying today. So you can bring wheat and dairy back into your diet. And in that book, it says that if you have an aversion to milk, you can bring it back by eating soft cheeses, yogurt, creams, because in the process of fermentation, the lactase, which is the enzyme in the milk, eats up all the lactose, right? And so when you're making milk, they churn it. You know, you've probably seen on a farm someone churning milk into butter. They separate the fat from the liquid, and the liquid is where all of the lactose is contained. So the rest is the fats of the milk, and that has virtually almost no lactose in it. So you can't run that bias that I'm lactose intolerant and you can't take yogurt and cheese. So it is better to approach dairy products when they're fermented.
To those who suffer from a gluten intolerance from wheat products?
Well, I pay attention to a lot of pop culture sometimes. And when I was a young boy, I saw this movie called Witness, right? And that's what Harrison Ford and Danny Glover is also in it. It's one of the few times he played the bad guy. But in this movie, Harrison Ford's character had to go to an Amish country, a community, pardon me, where they had a natural farm. And on this farm, they had a silo. Now, I'm bringing all this up to say that wheat, when you harvest it, you can't just rush it to the plate or to make it into its wheat products. You have to let it sit. Now, Dr. Ridgely, who was basically our national farmer, his wife wrote a paper and he posted it on Facebook. And luckily I caught it, that wheat is supposed to sit for 8 to 12 weeks before you mill it down, because it begins to denature. And the proteins, especially gluten, that we have an aversion to, some of us, begins to weaken, and so it won't harm you as much. So that's why the silo is very important. That's where they stored wheat. And that, when that was the first time I ever seen a silo with a lot of wheat, because they killed one of the bad guys in the silo. They let the wheat just fall on top of them and it suffocated them. Now, also, wheat has a long lifespan in this country. You know, America loves to talk about this amber waves of grain, and wheat is a very important in the American diet. So they have studied why wheat is a problem for many people nowadays, and it's not just gluten. It's because people like to eat the whole grain. You got to back away from eating the whole grain. And Vernon Muhammad taught us about eating whole grain wheat. And then commercializers, they like to separate the wheat grain. They're supposed to be a team. There's 4 parts to the wheat grain. 3 of them supposed to stay together, like 3 birds of a feather. And they help to provide the nutrition. When you break them apart and make cereals, they take away more than they give back. And then the third part is that even when we make the bread products, they're half baked. And Vernon Muhammad warned us about hot cakes and half baked bread. It could rise again in your stomach. You're really supposed to bake bread at least 2 times. That's where the term biscuit comes from. It's a French word that means bake twice. That's the best way to eat bread if you really want to keep it in your diet. Bake it twice and let it sit for a while.
Okay. Now, speaking of milk, how do we get pure milk products? Most of us have grocery stores or convenience stores. The milk is already pasteurized and in a jug for us. Is there any way we can get something that is pure and better for us?
Yes. The milkman is making a comeback. So you could sit tight for a while, because even though certain white people have a problem with the critical race theory, they are, fiending for milk nowadays. So they are bringing back milk into the communities. I mean, the purer milk, because there's some of us who remember when milk was delivered to our doorstep and we have to set out bottles, right? That was a universal delivery system. It was essential for it to be in our diet. Now, many of us feel that the intolerance level for lactose in the Black community is up to 80%. That's a myth, because as you grew up in the American school system, or if you were from the Caribbean, you were fed milk from preschool all the way up to the second standard in the Caribbean or the 12th grade in the United States. I don't remember running out of the lunchroom with, gas problems, or any of my friends having aversion to milk. It happens over time. It builds up because we too busy drinking pasteurized, homogenized milk. So we sit tight, and we could wait for our farmers to push harder to get raw, pure milk back into the food supply, because many of us need to search out farms. And if you look at farms, cows are treated well on family farms, right? There are books that document this, that they are not being tortured in certain documentaries called Cowspiracy. You just have to look for the areas where you can find raw milk. And, they treat these cows like family members. You see, they're not caged up. So we get away from the propaganda, and the milk will be more readily available if we just look a little harder.
Perfect. Now, Brother Charles, what about the wheat products? You made mention that wheat comes in 4 parts. We need to keep 3. What would you suggest we find or use that is currently in the stores if we cannot bake it at home?
Well, we got to work a little harder and help our farmers, our Black farmers in particular, to stay away from glyphosate. That is it's like a fertilizer / insect repellent, and it bonds to the wheat, and it makes the wheat like almost suffocate, so the wheat produces more grains. So you want to eliminate that and try to avoid buying products of that. But the Nation of Islam has always pushed for wheat to be in the diet. Vernon Muhammad says in book 2, page 173, that we, the Black people, need to plant wheat and raise all the wheat flour that we can raise. Is very important. So you just have to search a little harder and get to the direct source, which is us, the Nation of Islam, and support the efforts in Honorable Mr. Farrakhan. That's my bag of wheat right there. I bought it straight from the farm through the ABLE program, and you could trust us that we're not using glyphosate and other harmful fertilizers and pesticides that could be harmful. And then bake your own bread. You have children, It's just water, yeast, and flour, and put it in the oven. No, also one more ingredient, a lot of kneading.
A lot.
and enjoy, and you'll have good health.
Thank you, Brother Charles, and thank you for your insight on this subject. We look forward to speaking with you again next week for more tips.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Afterward, Vernon Muhammad has returned to give us an update on cryptocurrency and what's new on the blockchain. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline is dedicated to a good man and his good works. Longtime Chicago pastor and activist Father Michael Pfleger has worked tirelessly on behalf of poor and disenfranchised residents for decades in the face of opposition and trials. He continues to fearlessly fight and press ahead for the most vulnerable communities. This FCN volume number 37 edition middle page article is a message by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan entitled, "We Must Depend on Allah and Ourselves." To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
As price fluctuations continue in the markets, it is more critical now than ever to identify what's new on the blockchain, cryptocurrency, and financial investments. Joining us with more on this is Vernon Muhammad. Greetings, sir.
Greetings to you.
Thank you. Well, sir, what is new on the blockchain this week?
All right. Well, this week there's not much has changed since the last time I was on. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the market as markets across the world, stocks, bonds, and everything is in flux. But this is nothing new because we've been told that, hey, there's a wealth transfer that's going on. There's shifts in global economies. You can see that America's global dominance is now being challenged by China and various other developing nations. And right at the center of that is cryptocurrency. You may initially look and see that, oh, there's price fluctuations, as you were saying, with Bitcoin or Ethereum. And you may even hear or may have heard about Mark Cuban in a recent issue with the Titan coin, where here a billionaire, somebody who's supposed to know about money, lost quite a deal of money with this particular cryptocurrency. But the best thing to do is take the time to learn how money moves, learn about the velocity of money, learn about how markets shift and what happens when money is sucked from a market all of a sudden, how common that is, and what to do to avoid getting caught up in a situation like that.
Now, there is a lot of FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt about cryptocurrency lately. What should we pay attention to and what should we ignore?
Right. That is exactly where we need to put it. There's something called speculation, okay? And in just about any market, and again, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but whether you talk about real estate, whether you talk about stocks, cryptocurrencies, whatever, they're speculative. People have adopted the term, oh, it's volatile. Yes, it changes. Things go up, things go down. And when you put the focus on speculation, you're pretty much gambling. So instead of putting the focus on the gamble, on the quick payoff, on, how can I strike it rich or hit it big, the focus needs to be directed to blockchain technology, which is what cryptocurrencies or these tokens represent, the technology and how the technology is entering into the business world now and what opportunity that will open up to us.
It is digital twin technology and virtual real estate.
All right. Digital twin, again, going to the technology. Digital twin is how a lot of technological advancements are being done nowadays. Really, it's nothing new. The first time that NASA went to the moon, they created simulated models. Okay. And what digital twinning is, as technology advanced and developed, there's more and more refinement in what you can do with technology. So you hear terms like virtual reality or augmented reality. Okay, you can recreate situations in the real world just like you see and we experience on a day-to-day basis. Those computer models are being used to replicate everything that could develop in a real world situation. So for example, there was a video game back when I was a youngin' called Sims. And nowadays, the children are playing with Minecraft and things like that, but you can create whole virtual world. You can decide where this building goes and what the transportation system in this part of town is and who makes up the population and all the things that go into urban planning, for example. That would be considered a digital twin, because just like you have the city that you may reside in, you can create a total replica down to the smallest detail. And whenever they want to develop or whenever they want to advance technology, they use these digital twins to present models for how it could go, what could go wrong, what would need to be fixed, what would need to be accounted for, so that when they finally get to the real world development of this technology or manifestation of this technology, all the bugs and all the what ifs have been worked out. So digital twinning is what that's called, and why that's so significant with the blockchain. As I said last time I was on, we were talking about tokenization of real estate. Okay, real estate, real houses, property, buildings, things that people invest in the real world. That's being digitized now. So almost like the game Sims, there are multiple versions of these digital twins, virtual worlds that are coming into existence, and real money in the form of cryptocurrency is being poured into these as a way to advance technology and the use of technology to solve business problems in the real world.
Okay. Now, financial institutions and big time investors are still acquiring crypto and are still seeing its potential as an asset. What do you think that means for the average person?
Again, that it means that financial education and financial literacy is important. That's where we need to put our focus. With that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the herd mentality would stay away from or would avoid something that could potentially be good, or that herd mentality could cause a lot of people to rush into something that people with a little bit more wisdom and know-how say, okay, I'll take my time with this. But if you listen to a lot of the news stories, a lot of the information that is on the surface that people are paying attention to now, one thing that you'll see, the financial institutions, they're steadily acquiring more cryptocurrency. You heard Elon Musk a few weeks ago or about a month ago. At one point, he put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. Then a couple of weeks later, he said, you can. He offered the possibility of purchasing Tesla and Tesla services with Bitcoin. Then a couple of weeks later, he said, we're not going to do that. And now the tune has changed again to where, okay, if we transform Bitcoin mining and make it more environmentally friendly, well, will accept Bitcoin again, but he never sold his Bitcoin. He never gave up Bitcoin. So people who are in the know, these institutions and big time investors, they know that there's something of value there that they should keep on acquiring, keep on accumulating. And the average person should also take note of that and just take the time to learn so that when it's time to make a move, we know how to make an informed move as opposed to just throwing caution to the wind.
Now, historically, there is obviously still to this day a huge wealth gap between Black people and others. With all of this new information coming out about cryptocurrency, many of us do not know where to start and at what age to start teaching our children about cryptocurrency. You, sir, offer a class or a seminar about cryptocurrency. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that and when it is?
Absolutely. There's lots of information out there that people can learn. I like the fact that you brought up about teaching the children. I mentioned the games before because this whole blockchain industry represents a new field that we have an opportunity to step into, just like the telecommunications industry, just like when the internet became big. We had the opportunity to move from just being consumers to actually being involved in it. But, you know, we got caught up on TikTok and, ooh, look, I can tweet. But now what the blockchain technology represents is just like with this gaming and virtual real estate. Imagine if we introduce our children who are playing Minecraft to the fact that, oh, they can be the developers of these new worlds, these new lands, these new applications of technology. They can design whole transportation cities, transportation systems, and be a part of urban planning as a game. But the fact that that game is actually having real money poured into it. I just read an article about the largest virtual real estate purchase. Now, this is a game, right? Some real estate developing company put almost $1 million into purchasing one real estate plot in a game. There's money that's pouring into this particular sector on the regular. And if we learn how the technology can be used and how it will be used, what it's leading up to, then exposing our children to it gives them a whole new take on education, on empowerment, on closing that wealth gap, and on putting ourselves in a position of power, as opposed to just being on the sidelines as consumers. So to get more information about that, you can also go to goldmasterplan.info, and you find out what's coming up for the week.
Thank you. Thank you again for giving us some insight on what is happening with the blockchain. I look forward to hearing more about this again next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.